Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining How to Future-Proof, a conversation with SCAD's outstanding alumni to discuss the in-demand skills of tomorrow, how emerging designers can succeed in their creative careers, and all things innovation, inclusive design, interaction design, and more. My name is Josh Lind. I'm the Executive Director of Strategic Enterprises for SCAD, and one of my favorite parts is working with our students and alumni through SCAD Pro. SCAD's in-house innovation studio. I'll be the moderator for this conversation, and we're joined by Shabby Kashani, who is design lead for accessibility design system at Google, who received her BFA in user experience design from SCAD in 2018. We also have Devin O'Brien, senior, just newly added as senior design lead, who is at IBM Watson Studio, and he earned his MFA in graphic design at SCAD in 2006. And we also have industrial design alums, Austin Webster, who is the founder and CEO of Deeper, a music discovery app that lets users curate and organize custom playlists based on creators behind the music. So I want to start in with Shabby. Shabby, I am so happy to see you here. Great to have you.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
And Shabby, you have a story that every time you tell it, I love hearing it. For our audience here, can you tell them more about you, where you came from, how you got to SCAD, what you studied at SCAD, and where you are now and what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. Hey, everyone. I'm Shabby Kashani, and as Josh mentioned, I lead our accessibility design systems at Google. So I work really closely with material design and other design systems to develop accessible patterns and different accessibility principles at Google. But I wasn't here overnight. I was just like you, about to graduate high school, and I honestly had no idea what I wanted to do. And of course, my mom was begging me to become a doctor or an engineer, but at heart, I was an artist, and I was studying AP art at the time. So little did I know SCAD, this wonderful school, was harnessing the power of design and how design actually touches every aspect of our lives. I only knew about art. So when I came to SCAD, I was just overwhelmed by the many options and majors that were provided. So like a lot of students, I switched my major a few times because I really wanted to find something that fueled my passion and felt right to me. So when I was actually studying fashion design, so previously architecture, then fashion, I saw a SCAD Pro project being unveiled, and it was by Google. It was the very first time Google had ever come to SCAD. And at that moment, I had an epiphany that, wow, I want to work for a company just like Google. And after my sophomore year, I started researching into different fields like anthropology, because I had remembered that I really enjoyed my anthropology class from when I was studying architecture. But I was still worried that, I wanted job security. I know that's what my mom wanted as well. And as I mentioned, I was still an artist and I didn't want to leave SCAD. So through some soul searching and Google searching, I found something called UX design. And I was shocked because it dealt with anthropology and understanding people, but also the cutting edge of technology. And to be honest, I was a bit worried because I was like, I'm not tech savvy. Like, I like social media and my cell phone, but that's as tech savvy as I get. But that wasn't a concern when I joined the UX program at SCAD. And what's funny is right after the summer passed by, I was a junior and I told my friend a similar story. We were both orientation assistants. So we got to SCAD a bit earlier. We were looking at the catalog and she flipped through the catalog and showed me that UX design was being offered that year and Google was sponsoring the major. And it was written in the stars. I took that catalog, I walked upstairs for the freshman advisors, and I told them I'm switching my major as a junior right now, right then, like the first day back. And it was honestly the best decision that I ever made in my life. Needless to say, my friends thought I was kind of insane. My mom was like, girl, if you don't graduate. But here I am. And as I mentioned, it wasn't a worry when I was actually in the UX program, because at the end of my first year in UX, SCAD prepared me so well that I had an internship with 3M. I also did a SCAD Pro class that year with Microsoft. I couldn't believe it. And my final years there, I did SCAD Pro classes with BMW and Google, and I was so ready to interview and ready for a job that it's pretty much how I landed at Google.
And so, Shabby, how long ago did you graduate? I want to put this in context. What year did you graduate?
So I graduated in 2018. So it's been 2.5 years, which time flies by. I still feel like a kid.
2.5 years. You graduated in 2018, and Shabby, there is design lead in your title. That's amazing.
It's insane, honestly. And I have a ton of ownership. And I know this is sometimes a concern for other UX designers, like, oh, you're just going to be a cog in the wheel and like, you know, you're just going to be pixel pushing. That's not true at all. And I mean, I definitely believe it's because of the skill set that I learned at SCAD.
So in addition to the story you just told, I love it so much.
Thank you.
How did you navigate to your current position so quickly? What do you think happened? What did you do to navigate into a leadership position?
So first, let's talk about how I got into accessibility and then how that grew into a leadership role. So for those of you who may not know what accessibility is, it's actually a subset of inclusive design, which means you're designing for a diverse set of people, whether they have unique backgrounds, races, genders, and so on and so forth. And so accessibility really hones in on designing for people with disabilities. And when I switched into UX design, one of the first thoughts I had was, wow, this is a completely digital experience, and it's also pretty flat because you're just touching your screen. So how on earth do people who cannot see the screen interact with these devices? And that just fueled my curiosity. So I reached out to the Savannah Center for Assisted Living and started talking to people who had vision impairments and really understanding their story. And that's honestly how I got an internship at 3M, because I worked with people who had chronic pain and therefore had challenges with mobility. And so really the key was curating my portfolio with something that I was passionate about. And I think my passion for designing for marginalized individuals probably just comes from the fact that I'm not the status quo of what a tech person looks like. And all of my experiences growing up, led me to want to make others feel less excluded and rather included. So I really communicated this when I was interviewing with Google and just in my portfolio. And little did I know there was a whole accessibility team at Google. So I ended up in the right spot. And from there, there's just so much work because it's an emerging field, and there's a lot of research that needs to be done. So I kept working diligently, and I started training others externally and internally. And I think just having a skill set that is uncommon gets you to that leadership position.
What would you suggest for current students? What should they be focused on academically or creatively or professionally to become a leader like yourself?
Oh, thank you. So I have a few. I like to talk. But first, I would say building your craft. You're learning so much software and design principles and just so much knowledge at SCAD, and you're learning from professors who have been in the industry, so they actually know what they're talking about. And at the end of the day, as I kind of alluded to, your portfolio is really what sets you apart from others when recruiters are looking for talent. And also when you're going through that interviewing process, you're showing your portfolio constantly to other designers and talking through your thinking. And they just want to see that refined, polished work, because when you're in the industry, you're oftentimes you're not hand-holding, and your managers are oftentimes hands-off. And fortunately, internships prepare you for that. However, once you're in it, like, you better own it. So related, I would say building your communication skills are very important. And obviously this is for interviewing, but also outside of interviewing, just like at SCAD, you're constantly critiquing each other's work and communicating how to make your solution more effective and better. And so similarly, when you critique, you're oftentimes framing it in an unbiased manner. And in one way you can do that is by focusing on the user. So at Google, we have a mantra that says, focus on the user and all else will follow. And I think this applies to people inside of the UX field, but also outside of UX. Like, any field where you're designing for an audience or you have like spectators, you have a user. And so in order to effectively communicate your work, you should frame it around who you're designing for and make sure you're doing that research to understand like what those users actually need. And then finally, I would say building your community and network is super important. And you'll realize that the design community is very small, especially in user experience design. But I don't think it needs to be something like super scary, like, oh, you know, cold call this CEO or whatever. Honestly, start networking at SCAD. That's exactly what I did through all the volunteer opportunities, like the orientation assistant job that I took, or just volunteering for our masquerade ball, just fun things that you're interested in. And you'll slowly realize that you're meeting amazing people and you'll build friendships. And then once you all graduate, you have a professional network already available to you.
All right, we're going to come back to Shabby in a moment. I want to go over to Devin. Hi, Devin.
I got to follow this. Come on, man. That's really impressive, Shabby. It's really impressive.
Yeah. Can't wait to hear you. I'm impressed by you.
So I love everyone's story. Everyone's personal story is probably my favorite part. So Devin, let's do the same for you. Where did you come from? How did you get to SCAD? What did you do at SCAD? What was your winding path after that? And what are you doing now?
It's been a very winding path. I think that's a perfect metaphor. You know, I started off graduating from Louisiana Tech back in the early aughts, and I immediately became a print designer. I started off working for a mom and pop afternoon newspaper in Ruston, Louisiana, the Ruston Daily Leader. I spent a couple of months there, moved into a role where I was more of a full-time print designer outright, where I was working at a printing press. My wife got tired, my then fiance got tired of hearing me gripe about the nature of the work and how badly I wanted to actually teach. And she was like, yeah, so let's go ahead and get you applying for schools, because if you're going to teach, you know, you have to have that MFA. So let's move on that. I ended up getting accepted into a couple of them, and I went to visit each of them. The one that absolutely stood out to me, it was like December the 10th of 2003. I mean, I remember the day. I remember the recruiters coming to Savannah. It was spectacular, and everything just felt a little bit a cut above. And that was back then. I mean, that was, you know, we're almost pushing 10, you know, God, well, several years, we'll say. And so from there, you know, I did my time with grad school in graphic design, got my MFA in 2006. And I thought, okay, well, I can do a number of different things. SCAD's opened up the door for a lot, but ultimately I want to teach, and I love the mission here. Well, we had gotten pretty ingrained in the town. My wife was teaching at the time. So we stayed, and we stayed for 8 years, and I taught graphic design courses, and I worked for a product venture called Working Class Studio, which in some ways kind of gave birth to what is now SCAD Pro. And so it was a phenomenal experience. And I actually got to work with Josh on several occasions with SCAD Pro, which was then called the Collaborative Learning Center. And so from there, I ended up coming in contact with a couple of folks from IBM. And one thing led to another. I tried to resist as hard as I could. They took me out to dinner. They wooed me, and I was like, woo. And their mission for design just made so much sense in terms of what I had been doing prior. You know, it was like this culmination of everything. So I moved into an educational role at IBM. Did that for about 4 years. And then over the course of the last 2.5 years, I've been working with Watson Studio, and in particular, modular flows, which the whole premise of what I'm getting to do is I'm making it so that business analysts, so here's those users that Shabby was talking about. So business analysts and data scientists are our two kind of main people that we are really looking to help improve their processes. They're ultimately trying to build models to predict tons of different things. For instance, one of our customers is trying to figure out how, with the introduction of the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines, what is the spread of COVID going to look like? So, I mean, this is not rinky-dink work. This is like lives on the line, big deal. If we mess this up, scary things happen kind of work. My job is to make it so that those people's processes are simpler and to get them to the right answer faster, and for the tools to get the heck out of the way. And so it's an honor to get to work on stuff like this. And it's not only that. I mean, there's so many different applications to being able to allow users to build AI models. And my product in particular makes it so that they don't necessarily have to know how to code in order to do that.
Yay, designers shouldn't code.
But you need to know the ins and outs so you can
Agreed.
talk to your developers, because
Definitely.
oh my gosh, I feel like every single answer to every single question that I'm going to give to y'all today is going to revolve around the concept of adaptability. And if you can adapt, if you can understand what you're handing off and who you're handing it off to, and knowing the language that you need to hand it off in, then you'll be unstoppable. That's how you're going to future-proof that career.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. So Devin, what unexpected areas of opportunity did you find down that winding path, and how would you say that you seized them?
Yeah, so flexibility, adaptability. Yeah, it's really interesting because SCAD has consistently provided opportunity. I mean, I left SCAD 7 years ago to come work for IBM. SCAD is still continuing to present opportunities to me. Those connections, the people that I met while I was here, the people that have graduated since then, people reaching out to me on LinkedIn, all because I have that little acronym attached to my name. And so I think the opportunities that have been provided to me exist in a lot of ways, yes, because of SCAD, but also understanding and learning the importance of not just how hustle works. And I feel like Austin's going to get to talk about this a whole lot, but knowing when to rely on how to say no. So saying yes at first, as soon as you leave, it's like, yes, 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 I'll do this, I'll do that. I'm excited to take this project on. And you have that natural sense of hustle. It's something that's kind of ingrained in you while you're at SCAD. It's really hard to avoid because there's so many opportunities. There's so many things that are available to you while you're at SCAD. But over time, you begin to learn how to curate that. You begin to learn, okay, I can say yes to this, but is it going to be more impactful for me to say no? Is it going to be more important for me to be able to harness my energy in this specific way, to be able to devote myself to something even greater down the line? Because the beauty is inevitably, when you're interacting with people like Shabby, when you're interacting with people like Austin, interacting with people like you, Josh, those opportunities just keep flying your way. They just keep coming. So I think the opportunity is almost the easy part. It's knowing which ones are the right ones to take and knowing how to adapt when you do have them. Because there's a ton of on-the-job learning that you have to do with every single thing you take on.
One more for you, Devin. We have a few different audiences on with us right now. We have some who are industry leaders who are looking for the next talent to hire. We have some who are mid-career and interested in different career paths. We have some prospective students who are interested in SCAD. We have some students who are at SCAD. We have some parents of prospective students who are wondering what SCAD and what design and what creativity is all about from a career perspective. So in your professional expertise, what would you say are the fields or the careers that you would see as areas of growth or opportunity in the near future?
You got it. So I'm going to give like the IBM approved answers first, and then I'll kind of give an extension of that. So, I mean, first off, anything related to artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence, blockchain, quantum computing, those are the biggies. I mean, I know that in the previous panel, the crew talked a lot about the importance of what happened at CES. I mean, IBM won an innovation award at CES for the Mayflower. If you're not familiar with it, check it out. It's insane. It's an AI captained boat, and so you should definitely, all you industrial designers, you should definitely look this thing up. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. That being said, I think as far as taking it deeper, the important things to notice, the important trends to lock onto for the future have everything to do with what's happening, like literally right here. I mean, all of our habits have been completely blown up over the course of the last year. So many things have shifted. The way we communicate, the way we interact with one another. And so that's going to affect the way we design. At the core of it, design is all about making it so a tool gets out of the way and a human being is able to accomplish the task they're looking to accomplish. It's about affording the person accomplishing their goal. And so that being said, design continually has to look bigger and look past what is right in front of us. Yes, there are tons of easy opportunities for graphic designers to tweak the typography, make it just a little more legible. There's plenty of opportunities for industrial designers to think about a slightly better material. But we have to think so much bigger than that, and in so many more important ways, because designing for good is going to be the thing that sets us apart as practitioners. Understanding the need for racial equity and making sure that we're designing with that in mind. It's so easy to create AI models with bias built in. And so it's IBM's job, it's Google's job to think about how people are building those AI models in an ethical way so that there is emotional intelligence, so it doesn't disenfranchise other human beings. So I think the most important things that we can design for, I think it really stems from what's near and dear to your heart. How do you connect with that? And how do you make sure other human beings are being lifted up along the way?
Love it. All right, we'll come back to you in a moment, Devin. I want to move over to Austin. Austin, you also have an incredible story, and I'd love for our viewers to get to know you better. So can you tell us where you come from, how you found a SCAD, and what you're doing now?
Sure. Thank you, Josh. I'm Austin Webster. I hail from right outside Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. And I came across SCAD my senior year in high school. One of the stories that a lot of fellow alumni have, I received a catalog in the mail that outlined all the programs I studied in the city of Savannah, and I was mind blown. I was like, this is everything I want to do. I want to do it all. And I had just really supportive parents who we made a trip with the whole family down to Savannah, checked out everything. We then just started presenting the Exo Spider car, which was a student project. It was an actual car, a fantastic car. And they're demonstrating that students built this. They designed it and they built it. And I was just like, where do I sign up? Is there a second one being built? Where do I sign up? And at that point, it was just as good as gold. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I know I could figure it out in Savannah. And so that's how I wound up at SCAD. And now it's just great to still be connected with the programs in the university.
So tell us more about what you're doing now. You have a title that is absolutely a leadership role, CEO in what you're doing now. Tell us more about your work. Tell us more about your company.
Sure. So I'm the founder and CEO of Deeper. Deeper is actually a music data company that's reimagining music data for creators, consumers, and decision makers. We have a stable of products, but most importantly, we have the Deeper app, which is a music discovery app for all music listeners who enjoy streaming music to really go deeper behind your favorite song and find out why you like that song by using the creators behind the information. So I mean, this idea came to me, my background's in industrial design. I started off working professionally as an industrial designer, and while I found my way in Atlanta working, and I was navigating traffic, beautiful Atlanta traffic one night, listening to Apple Music Beats One Radio, and this show was on playing music, and it was a boy band mix of all mixes. And I was about to change the channel. I was like, I'm not into boy bands. And this one song just caught my ear. And I said, who is this? And I glanced over at my phone, and it was New Kids on the Block. And I was mind blown. And I was like, wow, that's a surprise. And so I took a screenshot. I said, I got to find out more about this song, because this is not what I expected from New Kids on the Block. And went home, went on Google and Wikipedia, and found out it was produced by two of my favorite producers. And one thing about me, I'm a big music nerd. And the producers' names were Teddy Riley and Leon Silvers. And for me, I was shocked, because these were two of my favorite producers, but I had no idea they worked on music together. And no wonder why this song sounded great, because these guys were behind it. And so I said, okay, they got to have other work they've done together. Let me find out. And I spent about an hour and a half looking up some songs they did together, making a playlist, putting in Apple Music. And at that point, I said, wow, that took a lot of time for a process to enjoy streaming music, where we literally have a record store in our fingertips. Any song I want, any catalog I want to explore, in a matter of seconds, I can pull it up. But if I want to go deeper, pun intended, and find out who's behind the music, that took me an hour. So I said, there's got to be a better way. And I said, well, Apple Music and Spotify, they have a lot of money, a lot of resources and talent. They'll figure it out. And then a light bulb moment just hit me and said, why not you? And it just hit me that, yeah, I have the ability to do this. My SCAD education gives me the resources and tools to solve this problem. Let's just see what happens. And I just start tinkering around with sketches, start ideating user interfaces. And next thing you know, I built a clickable prototype that I started taking around to events here in Atlanta, just getting feedback on. And the response was so positive that I said, maybe I have something here. And I put my savings into developing an app, met a team here in Atlanta that had technical developers, and we joined forces, built out a MVP, and the rest is history. Now we're running, launched the app and running a music data company.
I love it. I also love the spark. The New Kids on the Block spark makes me very happy. That is amazing. Did you know you always wanted to start your own company? Was this always in the plan for you, or did this come as a surprise?
It is a surprise. It is a big surprise. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, to be quite honest, and I always thought I wanted to do the opposite. My dream job was to work at Nike or Reebok designing footwear. That was why I got into industrial design. That was like the rock star level job that I wanted. As I evolved and started learning about all the other problems that were out there and realizing it was like the NBA, not everybody gets a shot. There's so many other great problems that need to be solved. And from there, I worked into industrial design. And then, as I said, I realized that I had a passion for music. I had a passion for solving problems. And when this opportunity presented itself, I just went with it. And leveraging all my professional experience, one thing led to another. And now I'm here running this company. And it's been the best professional experience I've had in my life, to be quite honest.
Love it. What would you offer as advice for others who either are not thinking about becoming a founder and CEO one day, or those who are? What advice would you give to that group of people?
Well, it's kind of like what Shabi mentioned earlier. You know, follow your passion. What's that thing that's going to get you out of bed every morning and that you would do for free? When running a startup, there's a lot of ups and downs. There's not a lot of certainty at times, but you got to have that passion that you hang on to that gets you through those down times and brings you to those positive moments. And for me, that's music discovery, that's music nerdum, if you will. And I always go back to that. And it's just helped fuel this company over the last couple of years, and it still continues to motivate me every day.
So Austin's company is one of the companies that SCAD Pro Fund has invested in, and we are so proud of your success, Austin, and much more that's coming up in the future. And we at SCAD are interested in finding lots of ways to engage our alumni. So Shabby came back and did a project with SCAD Pro recently around accessibility. Devin's coming back as a mentor next week for Startup. Any of the students who are watching, make sure you sign up and put a team together for Startup. It'll change your life. And our goal, I mean, having all of you here like this, talking about your successes in your careers, talking about how you're moving and have been moved into leadership roles is so exciting for me. And so I want to go through, we'll kind of go through a moment where I ask one of you questions and anyone can answer if you want to add on to it. I'm going to start with Devin. So as far as skills, you talked a little bit about this already. What would you say are skills that are learned and that students should keep in mind as they're in school or as professionals or on the job? And what would you say is more of that on the job training that no one's technically training you in, but you're learning as you go?
You know, you're going to get your foundational stuff from the school. You're going to get the things that you need to lean on from SCAD. What you're ultimately going to have to really learn to work with when you leave, it has everything to do with how flat or how stacked a particular company is. So how hard is it to get in touch with people above you and around you, and learning how to talk outside of your discipline. And I mean it's something that if you're doing a SCAD Pro class, it helps, but you're still surrounded by designers. You're not surrounded by people with completely different personality types necessarily, where their goal is almost completely different. I mean, we talk about 3 and 4 in a box in our discipline, excuse me, where you have like sales, you have design, you have engineering, and you have, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm messing this up. But the whole premise is that you have these different pods that are all inextricably linked. And you have to have things like feasibility, you have to have usability, you have to have saleability in order to make a product whole. And if all you have is design, the product maybe won't work, or maybe you can't sell it. And if you have, if one is way stronger than the other, then it'll reflect in the experience. So ultimately, what has to happen is you have to learn how to communicate. And this is something I mentioned with Shabby earlier. You've got to be able to hand off. And so, yes, designers don't necessarily have to code, but you sure have to know what the code means, what it can accomplish. Because if all you have is, I want to make this, and that's my hope, but you don't understand what the language is that's being applied, you don't necessarily know the limitations that are involved, you may be in for a really rude awakening. And just like with what Shabby was talking about, as far as like her whole thing with accessibility, I mean, that's a whole other rule. And that may not necessarily be something that's really put at the forefront in school. The sooner you can understand the rules that you have to play by, the better, because good design is good business. I mean, that's an IBM maxim from 70 years ago. But if good design is good business, what good design ultimately is universal design. It's accessible design. It's design that anybody can use, no matter their ability. Because if they can't use the product, why would they buy the product? So ultimately, it's about figuring out how to communicate with people. And I got to go back to my previous answer there, Josh. Flexibility, adaptability.
I completely agree with that. I'll say it's definitely collaboration, communication, and compromise. And then just to add to what Devin was saying, I like to frame what he said as just influencing in my role. Like in the accessibility world, unfortunately, we don't make money. We're just trying to make the products good. So it's up to me to ensure that teams consider people with disabilities early in their design process when they have a lot of other priorities going on. So really understanding like the business side of things, what are those teams' needs and how do your priorities fit into their goals? And I think this is done through the power of influence, which you learn on the job.
Yeah. Just to piggyback, too. The one thing I would say, just to tag on to what Devin said, being flexible is so key. But also embracing fear and leaping. Like there's so many opportunities that I got involved with when I was a student at SCAD, or even in a professional sense, that on paper didn't look like I was supposed to be there. And I just took a shot and went, and it ended up changing the trajectory of my path. And when I look back on those moments, that's what got me here where I am today, and I wouldn't have done it any way different. So those are my 2 cents.
Chevy, I want to go back to you on this one. So my question for you is, how has your perspective changed about design and creative career pathway as you've evolved over the past few years? And then I want to make it even harder for our parents who are in the room. And like you had said that going into law or medicine, becoming a doctor, or going into business is typically what your parents had seen for you. How do you think that not only has your perspective shifted, how do you think your parents' perspective of design and creative careers has shifted?
Yeah, it's a really good question. First of all, my mom is super proud of me. I don't think she understands what technology is, and I think we're all still trying to figure that out. But just to let you all know, everything we interact with is technological. So we're really determining what our future is. And I think that's super exciting. And I think that's why, UX design is so respected in the industry. So how my thought processes have changed, or like my perspective has changed since I started. Well, fortunately, I always really loved research, like while I was still studying at SCAD. But I think what I didn't understand was the engineering side, as Devin has brought up multiple times. I think what's really important is to understand the limitations of technology, because it's so easy to propose a solution that just like somehow works, like it's perfect, I don't have to worry about anything. But at the end of the day, someone is actually building this, and you shouldn't see like an engineer as separate from you. Like you all are collaborating together to achieve a shared goal. So while it's important to do user research, it's also important to do research into the technical limitations of what you're designing. And this research could literally just be having frequent conversations with your engineers and understanding what is the scope of this problem. I think that's another thing designers struggle with. Like we just make everything and it's just supposed to be built overnight. So I think it was just a reality check, to be honest. So I've modified my process by really just taking the initiative to talk to the people that I should be talking to. So I make more informed decisions, and just knowing that it's okay to not know everything up front. And that's really like what the design process is discovering all of this.
Who wants to follow that? Come on, that was really good.
It was.
Thank you. I know you all probably share a similar experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we hear a lot of stories like that. I always love the change in perspective. I always love people thinking that design is one thing and then having that viewpoint expand. That's one of my favorite parts of introducing people to SCAD, to design, to creative careers and pathways. That is the best part, is saying, oh my goodness, if you look around you, every single thing is designed than if you look at the screen and you think about all of those experiences, all designed. Everything.
Josh, I think one of the really important things is to note how scale really kind of blew my mind as soon as I left SCAD, and you know, it's really interesting because I feel like, Austin, you probably got to know scale really quickly. I feel like mine was jumping off the deep end as well, because it was like I went from thinking in terms of, okay, well, here's this website that's going to affect, you know, a couple hundred people, whatever, to, okay, here's an application that could potentially affect hundreds of thousands, because IBM tends to work on the business to business side rather than the business to consumer side.
Mm-hmm.
So Austin's app is working on the business to consumer side, but his is a whole other different type of scale. So yeah, I mean, man, I think you probably could speak toward the weirdness that is scale even.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the one thing I always, again, when we try to do our, you know, development, you know, building out the concepts and just working on just enhancing the app, is always thinking about, who are we making this product for? Who is it, that niche music listener? Who is that person who enjoys music but just needs a little boost to find their next favorite playlist? And we personalized it. We said, this is who we're going after. And it's, you know, we're all different all across the world, but we're all the same. And so kind of keeping that perspective and know that we're talking to that person in Georgia, we're talking to that person in Oregon, in California, or even New York, who really loves music and wants a new way to enjoy it. And you keep that perspective, it keeps things in proportion. And yeah, that's my 2 cents.
With you for a second. The name of this particular panel is How to Future-Proof. When you think of future-proof, what do you think about? How are you thinking about future-proofing yourself and your company and your employees that are working for you?
Yeah, it's really, again, the theme of this session should be flexibility. I think at the end of the day, I think when I look back on my journey to where I got to now, it's all about being flexible. It's about taking the opportunities when they come, meeting that, you know, that chance encounter with the person who's in a different discipline, but maybe you have some commonality, and next thing you know, you're working together. And the same thing I communicated to the team, you know, we're evolving. Our app in itself, we started off as a music app, and now we've evolved into a music data company, and we're building out multiple products. That being said, it's all with that same foundational practice of music data and reimagining it. But to be flexible, you got to be agile. You got to be able to take opportunities when they come, and, you know, be open to that new frontier, and don't be afraid. Take that risk, take that leap.
Shabby, what would you say about future-proofing?
Yeah, that really resonated with me, like being flexible, but also the idea of you never know what opportunities are out there. And it just brought up some memories from this past year, where my friend Mitzi, who I met in my graphic design class, she was trying to get into UX and I was in UX. So we were just like had a bond, and we were both minorities and women in tech. So, you know, we were best friends. And she was really passionate about the racial justice movement that has been happening for years, but really there's an emphasis last summer. And so she started an Instagram page called Where Are the Black Designers? And all of a sudden it gravitated the attention of so many tech leaders. And it started a conversation of diversity in the tech field. And she asked me, hey, like, do you want to speak? And never in a million years would I think like my best friend Mitzi would start something like this and then also give me the stage to tell my story. And so I think that came from networking, being flexible, and just being true to myself, which was something that I definitely struggled with in this field because I don't see very many people like me. And as I mentioned, I wasn't the tech savvy person. I don't consider myself a nerd. I'm just kidding. So I think like being true to yourself, because once you accept your identity is when people can think of you for certain opportunities that may arise out of nowhere.
Shabby, I want to connect with you at some point in the relative future because we need to get you talking and to a couple of folks with Tech Can Do Better. You too, Austin.
Yeah.
We need to get you guys connected because it's a handful of folks from IBM that started the initiative. And like anybody and everybody on this call, by the way, should be checking out Tech Can Do Better. It's all about racial equity. It's a beautiful thing that's being done here. But it would be really cool to get both you guys connected on this.
I'd love to
promote it too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Devin, what are your thoughts on FutureProof and future proofing? How are you doing that for yourself? Thinking about that for others?
You know, I've taken a couple of classes after leaving SCAD. You know, there have been free courses. There have been a couple of paid courses. Whenever and whatever you can improve yourself, go for it. You know, I mean, one of the things that I love about where I work, IBM offers IBM has this initiative called Think 40, where every calendar year we're encouraged to accrue at least 40 additional hours of education. And that can be, you know, with conferences, a number of different things. But we have a lot of e-learning courses that exist within the company. And so I get to learn for free about blockchain, about AI, about quantum computing. And I mean, tech is such a massive blanket term. And there's a lot that can fall under that umbrella. And the beauty of IBM is that it's always encouraged additional learning. And I think to stay hungry, to stay curious is probably the most important thing you can do to future-proof. You know, it's not enough for you to just look at your path and accept it and just run with it. You know, I mentioned before, you start off by saying yes, yes, yes to all these things as you're first getting moving. But eventually you learn how to curate it. You learn the things that get you really excited. You learn the things that really you don't really want to take part of because maybe they go against your values. But you also learn down the line, well, what are my blind spots? What are my weak spots? What are the things that I actually need to feed? Because early on in the process, I said yes to all of these things, but maybe because I didn't care much for this particular thing because it intimidated me, I said no. But maybe that's the missing piece. Maybe that's the Swiss cheese hole in your learning that you have to fill in order for you to take that next step to become the designer you ultimately know you have to be.
So this is a jumping off point for a question from one of our viewers. Her name is Yana. She's majoring in advertising and branding. She's a junior. And she asked an interesting question that we're already touching on. She said, what industry do you think needs innovation the most? She says she's working on a project and looking at the problems that are out there and wants to gain from your perspective on current trends. So I'll leave this open. Who would want to answer for Yana?
So what industry is that?
Yeah, the question is, what industry do you think needs innovation the most?
I mean, for me, if I look at obviously what 2020 brought forth and what we're still dealing with in 2021, we don't know what the foreseeable future is going to look like once COVID kind of hopefully gets eliminated. But that being said, I just think about the restaurant industry. I mean, small businesses where, you know, human to human contact is so essential for their revenue and their dollars. They still have essential, strong services that they're offering, but they need the tools to navigate these, you know, treacherous times. I think anything in that realm to help those business owners and things of that nature, I think would be awesome. So that's always on top of my mind.
Yeah, that's amazing. Along those lines, I think digital well-being is really important as well. Like, we're constantly on Zoom chatting with one another. And then when we get off of work or school, we go back on our phones and go through Instagram and Twitter. And so we're always on technology and we never have a chance to move away from that. So I'm really curious how our lives will adapt around this and how we might step away from the technology, but also maybe the technology becomes a bit more seamless and adapts to the different devices that you're on and helps you support your situational needs. So in Google, we talk about how disability can be situational, temporary, or permanent. And just to like illustrate that, like maybe there's a situation where your eye doctor has dilated your eyes, so you can't see in the moment. Temporary, like you don't have your glasses on when you first wake up. and then permanent because you have low vision or maybe you are blind. So with digital well-being and understanding that we're fatigued, how might our systems adapt to those needs and reduce the fatigue?
That's really beautifully put. I mean, it's kind of funny because I'd seen somebody post something around, you know, I start my day off looking at the medium-sized screen, and then when my day ends, then I can look at the giant screen while thumbing through my tiny screen. So digital well-being is definitely an important one, but I think two immediately come to mind. One of which is, I guess, less of an industry, like just government. Government is so horrendously far behind and is so in such desperate need of design and innovation, and it's ripe for the picking.
Sure.
So, you know, I would encourage, you know, if you see that there's an opportunity for a government job and you see that you want to do genuine good with design, there's an opportunity there. I think the other, which is kind of linked to it, is the medical industry. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's such a need for IMRA, electronic medical records, and it's not really even a thing. I mean, so much is still just done by hand, and mm-hmm. It's not really that reliable. It's clunky. It's pretty dreadful, and there's a lot of space for innovation in both of those spaces. Just like what Austin said. I mean, you look at the way that we've adapted and responded to COVID. Human beings, on the whole, we've found weird ways to cope with, whether it's with new jobs or new practices. But the problem that we're running into is that the design systems that all of these old jobs were built on are completely falling apart. They're not reliable. There's literally zero sustainability involved with any of these particular design systems. So, you know, service designers, if you're out there, fix this stuff. Accessibility designers, you know who you are, fix it. I mean, we're talking to the next generation of designers here. We're talking to your parents. We're talking to people that are already at SCAD. This is all in y'all's hands. I mean, the four of us, we're going to do what we can from where we're at, but this is a joint effort for sure. And the design systems that currently exist are not working. They are busted. And we're the ones that get to fix it. And I say get to fix it because I think anybody else is going to shy away from it because they're too damn scared of it. But truthfully, we have the honor, the ability to get to rethink these things because, well, I mean, I feel like we're all kind of cut from a little bit of a different cloth.
Agreed.
Devin, I'm going to stay with you for another question from one of our guests, Mike Green. He says he's curious about the purpose of technology to make life easier. How concerned is anyone about the idea as technology gets smarter? And he says, going on, the smarter technology gets, the less intelligent the average human needs to be. As tasks become simpler, they also become less gratifying and can create an inherent dizziness within.
Okay, so first off, Mike Green, I love you. You're amazing. You definitely need, if you're not already familiar with it, there's a book by Neil Postman called Amusing Ourselves to Death. Check that book out. And there's another book called The Medium is the Massage, an Inventory of Effects by Marshall McLuhan. Both media theorists. If we do not plan to build more ethical experiences, then we're going to have worse experiences down the line. And this goes back to building off of broken design systems. So, I mean, I don't have a pat answer for you that I can give in 4 minutes. But what I would say is, like, really think about how you're scratching that lizard brain of yours with every interaction you come across. Because if you're aware of it, if you're conscious of it, then you can take steps to adjust the way that you interact with the tools around you. That's the whole thing of all this. Where Postman and McLuhan both address the way that we interact with our tools inevitably shape any and all future interactions with those tools. And so you ultimately have to figure out what that means to you. And what's kind of sucks is this has to be done on an individual evaluation, person by person. It's not like somebody gets to just kind of hit timeout and be like, okay, everybody, change the way you're doing the tools. We have to do the tools different. It doesn't really work like that. And so I think we as designers have to figure out how to better inspire people, but it's still a very challenging job to end up rebuilding full design systems that are built on faulty design systems that are built on faulty design systems. All that to say, I think I'm going to have to punt and give it to you to hopefully figure out something good. I mean, we're all in it together, you know.
I would like to add, thank you, Devin, that was amazing. But I also think it's important to consider the context or like user journey. So what are the actions that someone is going through in which this technology and AI is presenting itself? For example, if you take like voice input, I say something and it's text, or it's speech to text. While that might make some people not as literate because we're not typing as much, it also enables others to write out more content than they wouldn't. So it definitely augments some people's abilities. Let's say, you know, I may have dyslexia and typing is just challenging for me. So I do think that there's two sides to the coin and it depends on the context.
Hey, Devin, we have a lot of people asking for those books again. Can you add that into the chat?
Absolutely.
And also, I want to go over to you because this question that was just asked is really focused on the problem that you went out to solve. You said it takes me too long to find the information that I'm looking for, and you're specifically looking to go into that field. Can you talk about how you feel about technology getting smarter and humans getting lazier, or what your view is on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. I mean, the technology has allowed, like I said earlier, your record store to be in your fingertips. And if anybody on this panel or anybody doesn't know what record stores are, there are these places where you went and purchase music physically. But now with, you know, Apple Music and Spotify, it's a matter of seconds. You pull it up, and that experience that you used to get going to the store, buying the music, looking at the liner notes, more importantly, that came with the CDs or the vinyl or the cassettes. That was an experience. It put value on that product. It put value on the creators who worked hard to make that music. And that got lost. And that's kind of what we wanted to do with Deeper, was like, let's evolve with the technology, but still keep that same essence, that same value that the people behind the music bring to the table, so they don't get lost as music continues to evolve. And unfortunately, we're seeing something similar with movies, all content right now. Obviously, movie theaters are struggling. They're shifting, like we've seen with HBO Max and Warner Brothers, putting all the first run releases on VOD platforms. That's awesome for convenience, but there was something to be said about the experience of going to the movie theater and paying your hard-earned dollar to watch this presentation for a couple hours. For that moment in time, you were really putting some true value into that piece of content. Now it's just a matter of press and play, and it's done, and you go into the next thing. So trying to find that balance and still trying to find ways to put value on the people behind this amazing content that's coming out every day. I think that's one of the things that's getting lost as technology evolves.
Well, I wanted to say thank you to Shabby and to Austin and to Devin for being a part of this and for getting to hang out with you today. It's been fantastic. What we always ask our students is to reach out to every one of these amazing people on LinkedIn, and don't just say connect. Write them a little message about that you saw them here and what it meant to you. And a lot of you are asking about how you can get into inclusive design. Reach out to Shabby. Talk to her about that. That is an incredible question to ask. Mm-hmm. So please reach out to her and talk about how you can get involved, recommendations for what you can do next. And we will do our best to respond, because we love having each of you here. To our industry partners who are watching, to our alumni who are watching, our students, our prospective students, parents. I want to thank all of you for being a part of this discussion and seeing how proud we are of our alumni and their successes. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you in the next workshop.
Thank you. Bye.